Mine's
button.
squished.
You guys having fun?
Sure, wait, which way is backwards and which way is forward?
This way is forward.
What's this do? I know what backwards.
We don't want to run around. Nice lake.
I'm gonna go in the fishies.
Man, they're right there.
It's getting deep.
I don't think the fishies are very scared of you. That is a lot of fish.
They're like in space.
Kind of stable.
I don't think they care too much.
Who wants to do it? Who will be the brave one?
A fishy just
They're all just staring at your feet. Hey, Bill, what do you think that is? I don't know, Joe. Yeah, I'm going to touch it. You touch it. No, you touch it.
That's their brains right now. I wonder what the size of a fish brain is. I know that one right there is thinking about it.
That's a Lincoln Continental, like what we used to have. Oh, Reagan's car. See that, Hunter? First used by Nixon. So this is the car that Reagan jumped in after he was shot in 1981? Yeah. Huh?
Can you jump in a car?
Well, they opened the door and they shoved him in to protect him. A Secret Service officer shoved him in there. John Hinckley had a 22 caliber handgun and shot him, and it went in his lung. And they rushed him to the hospital.
Did he survive?
He did.
But barely.
Yeah, it was actually more severe than originally thought, but he did fine. So this was bulletproof. He was just, but I know he was standing outside on the street when he got shot. Wow. Kennedy, when Kennedy was shot, he was in a convertible. It's another Lincoln. So it is convertible. Wow, so this is the convertible that he was riding in when he got shot. You remember that video? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Film, I should say. Hunter, you remember learning about when Kennedy was assassinated? He was shot in the back of this car. That was taken right before he was shot. It's an older one, that's for sure. Oh wow, it's old Eisenhower. I was about to say, that's old leather on there too. Alright, this is maybe FDR. Sunshine Special. Lincoln, so they were all in Lincolns. Oh, Teddy Roosevelt. Wow. This was a horse-drawn carriage. High-tech suspension. Choo-choo. Oh yeah, the wascally rabbit. Yeah. What do they use it for, Hunter?
Let's get a closer look. Plowing thing.
Yes. Plowing what?
Snow.
Yes. There you go.
I didn't go getting one from over
You got it.
over here. Over there.
It's a giant snow plow to clear the snow off the track.
It's a cat.
Choo-choo.
Yeah. Has an auger in it.
Oh, cool.
So I guess it's fed.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, so the coal train had the auger.
They control. Oh yeah. Feed pump. Stoker jets. Stoker engine.
Uh-huh. And then this is the where the fire was, Hunter.
That must be a really big fire.
Man,
Fire.
that's
Cinnamon.
huge.
At least you stayed warm. Person get back.
Yeah, so the auger would push the coal in there and they'd keep it stoked and keep the fire going.
Yeah.
And that boils the water. I mean, that generates the steam.
Just want to go faster. All I'm trying to do is just go faster. Literally all I want to do.
Let's go faster. Henry Ford built it and others. That's cool. Presented by General Motors. Their competitor.
All I have is this.
All right, go for it. Hunter wins.
Ready? Start. Ooh, mommy won.
Wow. Sometimes they don't roll real well.
It's 409 miles an hour.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Check, check, check. Bob.
Look at this one though.
Bob.
600.
Check, check.
The first Ford car, the Model A, 1903. Alright, are you flying? You got it.
You're walking on a wing while they're flying.
It's freaking me out a little.
Oh, what a scene.
Don't like it. Oh, no, 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 no. Oh, she is upside down. Oh, Lord.
No parachute either.
We're not going to be able to fix that broken ski either. We'll have to put on one of the extras we brought along.
Make sure you wax it down well with even more shoe polish. It must not have been slippery enough. I could feel the drag on that last run.
June at Stamford, Connecticut, Chief Aviation Pilot of the U.S. Navy with a bird expedition, Captain June.
Spirit of St. Louis.
If I could throw myself down on a bed, I'd be asleep in an instant. I pull the Spirit of St. Louis up 200 or 300 feet above the water, shake my head and body roughly, flex. I can't afford to relax. I must think about problems.
You guys know what that is, right?
Wright Brothers thingy.
Yeah, it's called the Wright Flyer
The Wright Flyer.
from 1903. Mm-hmm. Steam engines, Hunter. So the steam engines, this is one, and that is one.
Wheel thing.
That's what predated the internal combustion engine, was the steam engine.
It's also used for water.
Yeah, you can pump water with steam engines. Well, Mommy lit several. 4? You got 4 of them?
I got
5?
5. 4.5.
That's something else.
Good grief. All right, now Mommy's got to try again. She barely got 1.
Oh, I at least did more.
I don't know how many I got.
You got almost all the way to the top. You were like 2 shy.
Do you secretly go to the gym?
I think you got 6.
It's hard.
Now available through the Edison Light Phone service. Oh, did we mention it'll save you $50 on electricity?
Wow.
For details, call us.
Gun, the duck gun, from 1850, 1.5 inch bore. That's 3 times the size of our 50 cal. Yeah, the bore.
A 50 cal's massive.
Yep.
Daddy, why is the gun that looks like a knife?
It's a weller. What?
It's a shotgun.
Yeah, it's a shotgun. You can tell
That's
by
why
the
it's for
barrel.
duck.
And the thingy.
Yep.
Whatever thingy.
It's like a knife shaped like a gun.
Maybe it's to threaten people.
I don't know. What? Yeah.
Teenager's bedroom in 1987.
1987. Okay, I was wondering.
So do they have Big Bird in every single one? What? Sesame Street.
I had one of those exactly like that. GPS receiver.
That's good.
You had rollerblades? We both had rollerblades. I had that iMac computer just like that. That's almost identical to the TV that my grandma Bottomley used to have. Yeah.
King as he stood on the balcony of this motel. All over America, black ghettos exploded in rage and grief. To calm the ghettos, Robert Kennedy spoke.
Yep.
Black, and they're attempting to build with hatred and distrust. Black and also, I remember my family built.
That's what an old school room used to look like.
They're great. Simple to fit. And you need one. Yep, under the desk. Yeah, good luck with that.
Oh, duck and cover. We had one of those in the basement of our house on Red Bank.
Those things. Those are remote.
It's a jukebox. Yeah, my dad, your grandpa used to have one. War of the Worlds.
Can I sit on the couch?
Yeah, sure.
Probably not, but it's still possible.
Everyone is quiet. Oh, sorry, Daddy. You can't. Okay. Are you with the camera?
The steamy islands of the Pacific, back to the arms of their loved ones. Back
House
to
made
the
of aluminum.
familiar
Huh. You got a central fireplace to keep it warm. Kitchen.
Ooh, I can go under this.
Look at this massive steam tractor.
That's a big factor.
Yeah, it is.
How much are you gonna add of that into it? Same thing for extra. That's not too much. I like that.
Look at the baby dozer. Tractor, so I guess they could put multiple attachments and stuff.
Timmy.
Mathematica.
I like this a lot. I think this is really cool.
I got double-sided legs. We're walking on two sides.
Workshops, fields, equipment,
Guys, what's the Declaration of Independence?
We the people
No.
separate from Britain?
Yes, it told the King of England bye.
No, bye.
Yeah, basically it said bye. Yep. And then later came the Constitution, and that was we the people. The Constitution came later. 1776, July 4th. That was the Declaration of Independence, when we declared our independence from Britain.
Hence fry.
And this, Hunter, yeah, there is the Declaration of Independence. Right there. Chair your cousin was sitting in when he was shot.
When he got shot.
Mm-hmm. This is when the, you know what segregation was, right? Segregation,
No.
where the blacks were required to sit in
Oh,
like in a
yeah,
different
that,
part of the
yeah.
bus or go in a
When
different
the
bathroom.
person, the girl person.
Rosa Parks?
Yes, she's sitting there. They said, "Yeah," and she's like, "No."
You're right.
My
and
seat.
they have her bus that she did that. That's what we're going to go
I
see.
want to go sit in her seat.
Yep.
See the choo-choo? Is it the exact same one from the thingy? Is it a replica or is it the real one?
It's the real one.
It's the literal one.
It's the actual Rosa Parks
Look that all.
bus. It was. Well, it was about 60 years ago.
Somewhere on the side.
Which one?
That one?
This one right here.
Yeah. Sorry, which one? This one right here.
Hunter Grayson.
It's gonna be in that window.
All right. Cheese.
Wait. They're just taking a picture.
All right.
I'm not even taking a picture.
We can go out the front.
Can't hoard the seat.
Across the South are resorting to violence. These are few in number.
Let us have
That's not convincing enough.
it. If you let us know, we'll give you a cookie.
No.
As the women became weaker, they were force-fed. Finally, when news of this reached the public, it created a media frenzy.
See how they used to build them? See the picture?
Yeah.
And they'd have people at each station, and then the car would start down here with just a frame. See, and then it would move down the assembly line, and they'd put more and more pieces on it as it moved. See down here, it's got wheels.
What's this museum about?
America.
Wow.
Yeah, it's Henry Ford Museum, but it's about a lot of the American history. That's a heck of a telephone collection.
Oh, I think it's head on.
I had that StarTAC, that black one. I had one exactly like that.
Number 50?
Were they fun?
Yeah, 50.
Because you're old.
And I've used number 18 and number 19 had, and number 40.
That was a 1996 one.
Yep.
Thanks for the warning. Give me a heart attack.
It's a real locomotive.
The sheep and cows go along well together.
Mommy, where's that one?
See these light bulbs? That's what they used to look like. Old style incandescent light bulbs. Did you hear what he said? Very first direct current generator right here.
In the world.
That powers.
like a hotel where you move into it and live there for months at a time. Well, this is a boarding house where the guys that lived in this house worked for Thomas Edison across the street at the laboratory. Do you have a light bulb in your bedroom?
I think so.
Yes, you do. Well, that is because Thomas Edison figured out how to get a light bulb in your house. Now, here's the thing. In order for Mr. Edison to demonstrate his lighting system to the world to get everyone to want to buy it, he had to wire up some houses to show them what it looked like. Well, because his workers lived in this building, they used this building to test out how to wire up a house. So that makes this building the very first building to be wired up with Edison's electric light bulb.
By making a different transmitter to hear better, so he would have added with different materials. I also have a chance to voice, I was going to tell.
First was I spoke in the original phonograph, and a little piece of practical poetry. Mary had a little lamb, and she was quite a soul, and everywhere that Mary went, the lamb was sure to go.
That's it. That's awesome.
Tomatoes, which
Pickles?
make what? You got it. Mm-hmm. And pickles and all kinds of things.
Vinegar.
Oh, Campbell's.
Guys, do you know who the Wright brothers are?
Yep.
So here's the thing. This is where the Wright brothers were living when they invented the airplane. So the Wright brothers are the inventors of the airplane. There's Wilbur and Orville right there. Now here's the thing. We brought this house from Dayton, Ohio, like a giant Lego house. Took it apart, put it back together again, and Orville was alive. He actually went room for room with us, picking out wallpaper and carpet, putting furniture in the right spot, and then he gave us the furniture in the front parlor. That's the actual furniture they sat on to argue about how to make an airplane.
Cool.
Pretty cool, huh?
My dad.
Because they're brothers.
What does this mean?
That is a door created when the staircase was put over here. It's just a closet. Now, Grandpa Wright, he had a policy. If you misbehaved, he would grab a book, give it to you, and make you sit in the closet and read till you calm down. Can you imagine that, being punished by making you read? Seems silly, doesn't it?
Average teenagers.
I would open the closet if you lock it up.
But they worked on bikes for 12 years before they did any kind of airplane stuff. They did so well fixing and selling bicycles, they got rich. Wilbur and Orville were able to pay for all of the experiments on the airplane themselves. When they were working with bikes, they would sell the other people's bikes, the Columbias and the Schwinn's. They would fix anybody's bike, but they even made their own. That one was their first design. They called it the Van Cleve. When they made that bike, they were making the frame of the bike custom to the body of the rider. So I do not doubt that whoever bought that bike was over 6 feet tall. That's a very big frame on the bike. Now, in 1896, when Wilbur and Orville made that bike for the first time, your average bike cost $5. Your average guy was making $1 a day working 12 hours a day in the factories. So the average man would spend a week's wages to get the average bike. This is what the average bike used to look like. It had wooden rims for the wheels. It had solid rubber tires. No air in the tires. Not at all comfortable. You hit a bump with one of these. It had no brakes. The pedals only went forward. If you wanted to slow this bike down, you dragged your feet on the pedals or on the ground, or you did one of those hard rear wheel swings to get it to throw sand and stop. No brakes. The padding on the seat, a piece of leather glued to a metal frame and then bolted to the frame of the bike itself. No springs, no cushioning, not at all comfortable. They actually had a nickname for these bikes, these $5 bikes that everybody could afford. They called those bone shakers. Wilbur and Orville's bike, air-filled tires. There's a little shock absorber where the two forks meet the center shaft that goes up to the handlebars. So a little shock absorber in there. They had coaster brakes. The kind of brakes, kids, not on the handlebars, but in the pedals. So if you step on the pedals to the rear, it engaged the braking system and slowed your bike down. That's what this bike had. These bikes had no brakes, none at all. Their bike had a ½ inch of padding on top of the seat and then a nice spring suspension system underneath the seat. Hit a bump with one of those, you barely even feel it. As a matter of fact, here's an ad that they ran. 1901, they actually made that in 1896. This came out in 1901. On this side is a guy who's riding one of the bone shaker bikes. And you can see how he is doing. Every little bump. This guy is riding a bike like Wilbur and Orville's. And he's just cruising. Oh, I gotta admit it. It's so comfortable. The wealthy people of Dayton, Ohio were more than willing to pay the extra $1 to get a ride like this compared to a ride like this. Out front, Wilbur and Orville sold bikes. In the middle room, they fixed bikes and they made a lot of the little parts of the airplane. This is a scale model of what the very first airplane actually looked like. And children, this is way different from our airplanes, isn't it? Yeah, look at the pilot. He didn't even have a chair to sit down in, yet he had to lay down on his stomach to fly this thing. And guys, it amazes me how much they took from their bicycles and used to make the plane. Look at this. Can you all see the little black engine in the middle of the wing? Going from that engine up to the propellers on both sides. I'm going to show you in the picture here. It's easy to see here. Here's the engine. Going up to the propeller is the same chain and sprocket, that little wheel with the teeth on it, the chain goes around. The very same chain and sprocket that they were using to turn the wheels on their bikes. On the airplane, they used that chain and sprocket to turn the propellers. The wires that were in between the wooden supports holding the wings apart, bracing wires. On their early gliders, and they flew gliders at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina for 3 years before they tried the powered machine. On these early gliders, 1900, 1901, 1902, those bracing wires, bicycle spoke wires. The little silver piece on the crossbar underneath the two front flaps, that little silver piece kept their airplane on this wooden launching rail that they had built. This is a 60-foot long wooden rail, a 2x6 that they stood up on its edge with slats of wood underneath so it didn't sink into the sand. This was the world's very first airplane runway. Wow. And there, that little black shadow is that silver piece. That silver piece, a bicycle spoke hub off the front wheel of the bike. They took it off the tire, took the spokes off, nailed it to that piece of wood. It worked great. Now before we leave this room, I got one last thing to show you. On the floor of this display case, there's a small cardboard card with a little piece of wood and fabric on it. That little piece of wood is one of the most historic artifacts in any museum anywhere in the world. That little piece of wood is one of 3 pieces of wood that was deliberately taken off of the world's very first airplane. We know of only 3 pieces taken off of that plane on purpose. This one, the first one, was taken off in 1936 by Orville Wright himself and given to Henry Ford to say thank you to Mr. Ford for all that Ford did for the brothers here at Greenfield Village. Then Orville sent the airplane to England, and it was in a museum in England for many years. Came back to the United States in 1949 and was installed at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., big museum there. It has been on display at the Smithsonian ever since. Now, in the early 1990s, NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, went to the Smithsonian, took the second piece, a little bit larger than this piece, off of the airplane, gave the second piece to Neil Armstrong, the astronaut, and sent it to the moon on the first manned moon flight. Mr. Armstrong left that piece on the moon. And then years later, when NASA closed the Apollo program and they knew no other astronauts were going to go up, the last astronaut to go was told, get the piece and bring it home. They knew exactly where it was. He got it, he brought it back. The second piece to the airplane is now on display at the Smithsonian right next to the first airplane. Now, I said that there were 3 pieces taken off that plane. Just a couple of years ago, NASA went back to the Smithsonian. They took the 3rd piece off, gave that 3rd piece to the Mars rover, put it on the Mars rover, sent it to Mars. It is on Mars today, going around on that little platform thing that's taking pictures up there. That's where the 3rd piece of the first airplane is today. Out front, the brothers sold bikes. This room, they fixed bikes. In the back room, they built the airplane. We always say they built the airplane in this room, and they did. I am often asked, Chris, the airplane was huge. How'd they ever get it out the back door? What they would do is they would build these full-size sections. We're looking at the middle 16 feet of the wing here. This is where the pilot was, the engine was, and the propellers were. They would build these full-size sections, then they would test the section to see if it worked the way they thought it needed to. As long as it did, they would take it all back apart. Every piece of wood, every piece of metal, every nut, bolt, and screw, disassembled, packed into boxes, sent off to Kitty Hawk, and then they would build the next section. Send that off, build the next section. When they had all the sections built, they went to Kitty Hawk, put it all together for the very first time, and there they flew. This is why today, if you see a car that has a Ohio license plate on it, it says birthplace of aviation. If you see a car that has a North Carolina license plate on it, it always says first in flight. Everybody wants a piece of the action, right? So, in Ohio, the idea was born. In North Carolina, it was put together and flown. I had said in the other room, they took much from their bikes. Look at the 2 big black metal frames that used to hold the propellers. The propellers went back here. This is the rear of the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, in your mind's eye, if you would, take the propeller off. Put a bicycle seat where that propeller used to be. Put bicycle tires at either end. Pedals down here. Turn the frame up. It is almost identical to the frame of every bike out in front of the shop. The pilot would lie down on his stomach in the little wooden cradle closest to us. Can we all see the 2 pieces of wood that are sticking up off the bottom wing at almost 90-degree angles up toward the front? That is not where the pilot would hold on to steer the plane. In the model in the middle room, you might have noticed the pilot was holding a stick in his left hand. The stick would have gone over the front edge of the wing, out about a foot. He would have held that, and the stick controlled the two flaps that were out in front of the plane that helped him to go up and down. The stick did nothing to turn the plane. If he wanted to turn the plane, he had laid his body down on the wing, and his hips went in between those two pieces of wood. If he wanted to turn, he would shift his hips back and forth inside the little wooden cradle where the two pieces of wood are sticking up, as if he were turning a bicycle.
Wow.
Guys, when you turn your bikes, you turn your handlebars, but you also lean into your turn just a little bit, shifting your hips on your bicycle seat to keep your balance. That is exactly how the pilot turned this airplane. The little wooden box toward the back of the wing behind this bar here, there's a small wooden box and there's a bar of wood that goes across the top of the box. That's where the pilot would put his feet. If the plane was going up, the pilot's toes were in front of the little wooden bar. If the plane was coming down, the pilot put his toes behind the wooden bar. He put his feet in those positions so that his body wouldn't slide right off the open wing. He had no safety belt, no safety harness to hold him on. Didn't even have a parachute. Kids, in their later experiments, they were often 50 to 150 feet up off the ground, cruising along at 25 to 55 miles an hour, with just those couple of pieces of wood keeping them from flying right off into space. Brave! The older brother actually wrote in his diary, "We probably should have been afraid." You think? But, he continued, we were so well prepared from all of our experiments and so focused on what we were doing, we didn't have room for fear. That's good for Wilbur and Orville, but I think I still would have needed a second pair of shorts when I landed, but that's me. These are the actual machines that they use. That's their drill, their saw, and their lathe. Those three machines cut every piece of wood and almost every piece of metal that went into the world's first airplane. On the saw, there's a little plaque, and on that plaque, a historic fact that to me is the most impressive thing in this entire building. As wonderful as the bikes and the bike parts are that Orville actually gave to us, as marvelous as the pictures and the models and all the stuff is, what's on that plaque gives me goosebumps. Now I'm going to preface what's on the plaque, and I'm going to close my comments with this. For hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, going all the way back to Leonardo da Vinci, people were trying to design, build, and fly a machine that was heavier than air, not a gas-filled balloon, powered by its own onboard engines, not just the wind, and controlled by a human who was on the machine, not on the ground with ropes and strings. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. In 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright from Dayton, Ohio, succeeded. And then the plaque tells us that within 65 years of their first successful flight, less than one lifetime, we were walking on the moon. And kids, the tail end of that journey to the moon all started right here.
As a matter of fact, Chris is now standing on the very spot that Wilbur Wright stood when he blew his nose. I'm kidding.
Guys, thank you all so very much for coming.
Awesome.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the childhood home and birthplace of Mr. Henry Ford.
Oh.
So he was born and raised here, born in 1863 during the Civil War. The United States was split in two. The North was fighting the South. And Henry Ford was living up in the north. And these pictures over here are actually his uncles. They were soldiers for the Union Army during the Civil War. So he's born in this house during the Civil War, living here with his mother, his father, his grandmother, and his grandfather. He's the oldest of 6 kids. You have any siblings? Yeah?
Yep.
How many?
1.
1? Can you imagine if you had 5?
It'd be bad.
It would be bad. It'd be a lot, huh? So there's a lot of kids living in this house, and originally this was the end of the home. So you have your bedrooms, but you can't go in there unless you're sleeping, because we don't hang out in our bedrooms back then. And we don't go in that room over there, because that's a formal parlor. You only go in there if you have guests. So you're living in this room right here. These 2 doors used to go outside. So when there were 7 people living here and number 8 was on the way, they decided they needed to add on. So they added a bedroom over here, and they added another room back there, moving the kitchen from this room to the next room. And eventually they do a further addition, moving the kitchen even further back in the house. So as you go through the house, you just keep going straight. It's one room after another. There's no hallways or sideways or anything like that.
Keep going straight.
Yep, keep going straight through the doorways. So if you want to know,
a fire?
there's a fireplace in almost every room. We have a stove because that's our heating. In the winter, we have no other way to get heat unless we use our stoves. So we have a stove here, keep that door open to the bedroom, and that's how you get your heat in the bedroom.
Thanks.
You're very welcome. Enjoy your visit today.
Another house to be.
So that's their kitchen. Huh.